Hey guys, can you hear me? Okay. Welcome to Ignite. My name is Praveen Vijayaraghavan. I drive the security and compliance pillar for Microsoft Teams. The focus for today's conversation is on how to protect the content which is being generated in Teams. And we'll be splitting this into two parts in the 20 minutes, which is around how do you secure the identity and how do you secure the data. So let's start with a small prayer to our demo gods, because I'm actually going to try a few live demos, and hopefully it works. And if it doesn't, we have screenshots. So let's get started. So the three topics which we'll be covering today, one is how to configure conditional access with Teams. This is something which we oftentimes find that our customers, like you don't fully use the capabilities which are there in the platform, which then leaves a significant part of your enterprise at risk. So I do want to touch upon how easy it is to configure conditional access and how it applies to Teams. The second part is around configuring the DLP policies and actually seeing it in action. Hopefully this is the one where the network glitches as well as our service holds true, and you should be able to see the messages getting blocked. And the third part is around all the e-discovery investments which we have recently made. The demo is going to be heavily focused on our advanced e-discovery SKU, which we call as the E5 SKU. And I'll just walk you through the capabilities which we have, including the newly announced redaction capability. So let's start with conditional access. As some of you, how many of you in this room have enterprises which use some form of conditional access? Okay. So I'll skip the pitch about what conditional access is. How many of you actually use it in the context of Teams? Okay, so it's important that you secure your organization from a team standpoint as well. The beauty of the features which we have in Microsoft, and this is something which you will hear repeatedly, is that we make investments in these broad pillars in Office 365 and Azure AD, and it kind of accrues value to all our premium workloads. You won't find teams within Microsoft trying to reinvent the wheel, trying to make the same kind of investments, because from a customer standpoint, we want to give you this one console experience, one set of attributes to manage, because it's just very simple. So conditional access falls into that kind of a category. So if you've already configured conditional access, you would see Teams as an application which is available in your conditional access configuration. Some of these scenarios around it could be things like you don't want your users, for example, accessing content from, say, an unmanaged device. Or if you want to block users from, say, accessing from non-work locations, maybe it's after business hours, and you don't want them accessing from home, then we have ways in which you can create these policies, enforce it for sets of users, and every time they try to open Teams, the action gets blocked. The key part about conditional access, as a lot of you in this audience already know, is that the check happens for authenticated users. It's only after the authentication happens, we do an authorization check to see if they meet the set of conditions. So switching to a demo. So this is the conditional access page in Azure AD. So if you click on conditional access, network, going once, going twice. Okay. So when you create a new policy, you can give it to a specific set of users. And just for this demo, let's just do all users. The key part is you can include Teams as one of the workloads. So if you search for the Teams application, and then whatever is your organizational needs, based on sign-in risk, device platforms, just follow the normal course of setting up a policy in your organization. And for example, if you want to grant access only if, with an MFA prompt or from a compliant device, here are your options in the conditional access page. So once you create these policies and you apply it, the next time the user tries to log in, which is pretty much within a few minutes, you will see the feature in action. Switching back to demos, sorry, the slides. So this is a screenshot for a user on whom I'd created a conditional access policy. This prevents the users from accessing Teams from an unmanaged device. So when he or she tries to log or launch Teams, they would get this error message in an unmanaged device. Similarly, if they're trying to access it from a non-work location, if you've created the right policy and saying that these are the set of IPs or subnets from which you can access the content, they would get this error message saying that you are an authorized or authenticated user, but you don't have the rights to access Teams. So the next part of the conversation, again, from securing the identity is having guest users. Again, how many of you in your organizations have used guest users in the context of Teams? Excellent. So when you want to invite people, maybe they're federated or not, but maybe they have Contoso IDs, Gmail IDs, it doesn't matter. You create these guest user identities in your organization, and in a way, you're managing those identities. Now, these identities, you can even specify what kind of permissions they have in Teams. Like, for example, you might not want guest users to use your voice over IP features, so you can disable those features. So we expect our customers to enable guest users and then use the workflow to also pick and choose what are the capabilities which are there. Again, how many of you in this room know of the Teams administration portal? Okay, so guest users, again, is part of the org-wide policies. Some of the interesting feedback which I've heard when I was in the floor yesterday, and I want to kind of check with the audience over here. We have messaging policies, voice policies, and all of that you can manage to sets of users. Do you have similar requirement for sets of guest users? Because the current workflow is, it's an all or off. You either get all these functionalities to all guest users, or you get subset of it to all guest users. We don't have a workflow where you can pick and choose guest users. Do you see a need where you need for subset of guest users? You do? Okay. So I got this from more than a couple of customers who had stopped by yesterday, so that's why I just wanted to check. So this is feedback taken. We will try to merge our messaging voice policies. Today you can manage users. It's a pretty awkward workflow. When I got that feedback, actually I was trying it out yesterday. So looks like you can manage internal users but not guest users, and we'll try to kind of merge everything together so that you have one place stop to kind of set all these policies. So moving on to information protection. So data loss prevention engines have existed for a long time. Microsoft has also made significant investments. How many of you use the first-party Microsoft solution, which is available in O365? Really? That's it? Okay. What are the kind of vendors you interact with? Is it McAfee, Symantec? Any names, specific names? I'm sure you guys have some DLP policy, so let's start with that. Do your enterprises have any DLP policy at all? Okay, so which ones do you use? Symantec, okay. Anybody else other than Symantec? ForcePoint, okay. So today the Teams DLP solution, and we announced this sometime earlier this year, we have the first-party offering, which is we are deeply integrated into the Microsoft stack because one ticker price, we work with the same company, and that's what we offer to our customers. But we also provided a set of APIs, and we started working with a few partners. Marsh is one of the partners we worked with, McAfee was the other, and they integrated into the DLP APIs which we provided to our partners. Essentially, they now have the ability to inspect Teams content and use this one policy engine which is used for the rest of your organization. End of the day, customers are not using these DLP engines which are specific to workloads, but it's for the entirety of the enterprise. So we understand that. So if you have specific DLP vendors with whom you would like us to work or start a relationship, just let me know and we'll make sure that it lands properly. Right now, the demo which I'm going to show is the first-party DLP offering. So let's quickly skip to that. So this is a Teams channel in which the DLP policy has been created. Creating a DLP policy is straightforward. This is the Office 365 view of how to create a DLP policy. For example, if you just click on the financial data while it loads, you can see that Teams chats and channel messages is one of the attributes which the DLP engine can protect. This policy is pretty straightforward. It's looking for social security numbers and credit card numbers, if I'm right. So that's the out-of-the-box policy which you can create. Once the policy is created, you can say that specify this policy to sets of users or sets of teams, and it just kicks in. So in this demo, we have this user who is trying to create content. So I'm just going to copy paste previously sent content. This is a bunch of SSNs. And she's posting this in a channel. So let me switch my view to the recipient of the, okay, that got blocked really fast. So let's try it once more. This is the last message which was sent. This is the recipient view. The recipient typically sees this message for a few seconds, and if you notice, it just gets blocked very quickly. We call this a passive DLP system because we are not actively blocking the content from reaching the recipient. And this was a very conscious decision which we took, primarily because we did not want to hit our messaging SLAs. So unlike email systems, customers expect messages to reach in seconds, if not milliseconds. So if you notice the DLP interaction, the recipient could see the message for a few seconds. Perhaps it's 2 seconds, 3 seconds. And after that, we nuke the content from both the sender's view as well as the recipient's view. Even when we work with our third-party DLP system, from a team standpoint, the look and feel, the messages which you see, all of that is the same. The only difference is that the policy inspection is being done by your third-party DLP, or the non-Microsoft system. So there's an extra bit of lag or delay where the information is being sent to their policy engine. The policy engine does an evaluation, and then it sends us a verdict which says you should block this message. From a team's DLP standpoint, we scan millions of messages, literally on an hourly basis, and our SLAs are very aggressive. We want to make sure that we are blocking this content as quickly as possible, because at the end of the day, while it's not an active DLP system, we definitely want to have our SLAs as close to an active DLP system as possible. So these were screenshots in case the demo didn't work, so let's skip that. So the next demo is around our advanced e-discovery workflow. So e-discovery, pretty much any enterprise out there is looking for ways in which you can search for content. Many of the enterprises either have hold policies, they're either under investigation, or the employees are under investigation, or there's some kind of a legal counsel, some kind of a requirement for which you need to get the content out of the system. Microsoft, again, has a full-fledged e-discovery solution. It's worked so far for Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and over the last 1+ year, we've been investing heavily from a team standpoint as well. End of the day, from your side, it's just content. It doesn't matter whether it's generated in Teams, SharePoint, Exchange, but you want to make sure that you have the right tools in place to search for the content and also take appropriate actions. So in this demo, we'll see how easy it is to create these policies from an e-discovery standpoint. So how many of you have used the advanced e-discovery workflow? Okay. How many of you actually use non-Microsoft e-discovery solutions? So from, it starts with creating what are called data custodians that pretty much are the set of people whose data you're interested in. And it then proceeds to creating some kind of a hold on these users, because you don't want these users to delete the content. Perhaps they are under investigation, so you want to hold the content. Once you have done that, you can initiate a search, which could be based on keywords. You could be perhaps looking for text, something like Project Scorpio or this specific user who's been discussing about these set of projects. So once you create this search, you create what are called review sets. This is essentially the content which needs to be reviewed. So I'll quickly jump tabs to a review which I've already created. So this is a filtered view of entries which say your legal team or counsel would be looking at. One of the new things which we recently announced was the support for threading support, which is essentially in Teams, the messages keep going back and forth. Early on, when we released our e-discovery feature, all of them showed up as individual messages, and from a customer standpoint, that was painful because there was no threading, you didn't have context of who sent what was the response for. So now in our advanced e-discovery UI, if you notice, this entire view is a threaded view of what you can see on Teams, which is on the right-hand side. Whatever interactions have happened in the Teams app shows up on the e-discovery view for admin consumption. Similarly, if there are any attachments which are sent, those are also available for download. So admin can just click on it, and that particular file gets downloaded. So if there's sensitive content in that document, the compliance officers as well as legal officers have access to that content. Another cool thing which we just announced is around the notion of redacting content. So you could have cases where, as part of a reply to a request, you generate a lot of content, but not all of the content needs to be handed out. Maybe there's some parts of the content which needs to be redacted. If you have use cases like that, once you go into annotated view, you have a new feature called area redaction. You can say, select this text which needs to be redacted. And within a few clicks, now you have created this redacted version which can then be handed out, say, to your outside counsel. To create this, thank you. So to complete this workflow, what will happen is we'll need to burn into a redacted PDF and then just follow the normal export process. So convert selected PDF to a redacted PDF. And once that's done, you can say, export this content. And when you're exporting this content, just provide a name, exported PDF. Make sure that you select the conversation files so that it comes out in a threaded context. And then also say that replace the exported content with redacted PDFs. Once you click on export, it triggers a job. So just to keep this demo simple, at the end of the job, you're given a link to an Azure blob. You just need to connect to the Azure blob using some tool like Storage Explorer, which is available for free. And what you get is a PDF. When you double-click on the PDF, it opens up, and you can see the redacted content. This is an old file which I had created before the demo. But whatever section of the file which you want redacted is not available anymore. You can hand out these PDFs to the external counsel, and with that, you're done. So we continue to make these improvements in the e-discovery experience. We have a lot of investments which have recently happened in the retention capability. We just announced the one-day retention feature. This is the first service within Microsoft Office 365, which gives you a day's retention promise. And we just rolled it out 11.4. We received 100% saturation across our data centers. The first set of SLAs have been encouraging, but we still have some improvements to make. We are aware of it. Please go through our documentation on our current set of SLAs. And we do want to get to a point where we truly give you a one-day SLA product, which is after a day of sending the content, it shouldn't be available to e-discovery admins, search admins, Teams client, Teams search. We have multiple versions of cache, which is across our system, but we have every intent to nuke every single cache within a day's promise. We also have supervision capabilities. We made massive improvements in that. We find a lot of interest from both enterprises as well as EDU sectors on kind of making sure that the right content is being exchanged and also making sure that you have the right rules in place. So with that, I want to call an end to the theater session. I'm on time or a minute over. Thanks for attending this session. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.